Highbridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Gold Experience, Following Prince in the 90s, by Jim Walsh. Read by Ron Butler. Introduction. Prince and I both love music and basketball, so it's only fitting that I found out that the little love god had passed away as my son Henry and I were on our way to our twice-weekly basketball game. Thursday, April 21st, 2016, 11:50 a.m. Jade Tittle, somber and far away, broke the news to us via The Current, 89.3, Minnesota Public Radio's influential alternative music station that in the last decade of his life became the go-to source for all things Prince. I say far away because the volume was way down on the car radio, but even from a distance, I could hear the gravity in the DJ's voice, the disbelief. Shit. No. I turned it up. With great deliberation and palpable shock, Jade confirmed that a body had been found at Paisley Park, and that it had been identified as Prince, age 57. We were at 46th and Grand Avenue in South Minneapolis. I stared at the stenciled letters on the door of King's Wine Bar and at the red stop sign in front of us. I patted my son on his basketball shorts, turned the car around, and said, "Dude, I gotta work." He slumped into a respectful silence, and we drove somberly back to my home office as Prince's music filled the car, and memories of his life flashed before me, including the last time I saw him at Paisley Park for his January 21st, 2016 piano and microphone solo show. I went as a guest of my friend Andrea Swenson, whose thoughtful, passionate, and playful coverage of Prince over the past few years for The Current kept me in touch with the latter-day doings of this brilliant artist I covered in the 90s, when I was the pop music critic at the St. Paul Pioneer Press. The show was fantastic, of course, one I'd always dreamed of seeing Prince stage, and a few weeks later I wrote a short blurb about it for the Minneapolis-based Star Tribune. Sitting at his purple piano, hair and fingers flying amid the grandeur of a kaleidoscope light show, the beautiful one made like his one-time muse Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart in as memorable a one-man performance of music as I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Bravo and more, please. Now here he was, just a few weeks later, dead. No more. The void was as instant and as unfathomable to me then as it is now at the moment of this writing. As Prince's body lay in an elevator at his Paisley Park compound in Chanhassen, his magnificent heart having stopped from what the Midwest Medical Examiner's office in Ramsey would weeks later deem to be a self-administered deadly dose of the synthetic opiate fentanyl, the planet sobbed, and a rainbow appeared in the skies over Paisley. "This is what it sounds like when the whole world weeps," I posted on Facebook and Twitter, then returned a phone call from my editor at minpost.com and wrote a fast eulogy. That night, I went to the Mad Ripple Hootenanny, the 10-year-old singer-songwriter showcase I host and play at in Minneapolis, whose weekly meetings can sometimes feel like a drunken church. This night, it was all that and more, and thanks to my buddies Sean Stelton and Doug Collins, we were able to open and close the night with mournful versions of Purple Rain and a handful of other Prince tunes. At the same time, the entire universe erupted in Prince music, with previously unseen videos and unheard tracks from the vault being shared like newly unearthed scriptures. And in downtown Minneapolis outside First Avenue, an impromptu service and tribute got blasted out via social media and The Current. For the rest of the weekend, I went fetal, mainlining Prince's music, writing, weeping, and finally that Sunday night, as so often happens with sudden death, I felt a need to gather up everything I could find in my fans' archives and hold it close. I pulled together all my Prince vinyl, CDs, cassettes, bootlegs, and newspaper clippings, and I spent the night reading articles and liner notes. I went through the boxes, some of which I hadn't touched since the 90s, and I was happy to discover I had saved some good stuff. press releases for all sorts of events, including the Valentine's Day 1994 release of The Most Beautiful Girl in the World single. Magazines, including copies of the old Controversy fanzine, Neil Carlin's Rolling Stone cover story, various Prince-related Village Voice, Paz, and Jop polls, and cover stories from Vibe, Jet, Billboard, and Spin. Catalogs from the old New Power Generation retail store in Uptown. A short-lived CD-ROM experience called Print Symbol Interactive, and the floppy disk with the software to translate the print symbol into newsprint. The notebook and pencil I used to interview him, and hard copies of my 3 interviews with him. Napkins from the Emancipation CD release party, and a napkin from the 1996 Prince Mayte wedding reception, fashioned for the one-night-only bash with a combo M and Prince symbol. A small box of his favorite cereal, Cap'n Crunch, bowlfuls of which he provided to guests at his pajama parties. A press laminate from the 1994 NBA All-Star Game party at Paisley Park, probably the most star-studded night in the studio's history. A beautiful booklet/program from 1995 with my liner notes from The Gold Experience that I never knew existed. A cool one-sheet for the Rock and Roll is Alive and It Lives in Minneapolis single. And a very cool note he sent to me around Christmas time in the late 90s that read, "Peace and be wild." A few weeks later, I started digging around some more, and this book is what I found. What follows is a real-time version of my coverage for the Pioneer Press from 1994 to 2002. None of these news clips is readily available online, so I had to buy all the transcripts of my stories from newslibrary.com and reproduce them here with permission from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Rereading them today, it's clear I was always rooting for Prince, or defending him, and I wasn't alone. Countless Prince record reviews over the years concluded with the stunningly unoriginal thesis that a specific record or concert was a return to his 80s glory days. So it's perfect that in the weeks after his death, it was Prince, staunch defender of the independent recording artist and foe of the record industry, who became the first artist in the history of the Billboard 200 album chart to land 5 titles simultaneously in the top 10. In 1997, before his Jam of the Year tour landed at Target Center, I asked Prince via fax if he thought people were starved for the real spontaneity and fan-musician connection he provides. "They're definitely starved," he replied, "and I am the chef. Bon appetit." For me, it was always an honor, pleasure, and great joy to cover, interview, spar with, and bear witness to the genius of Prince, or the artist formerly known as Prince, or the artist, or Prince symbol, as he was known for the bulk of the time I wrote and reported about him. I started working at the Pioneer Press in September 1994. I began writing about Prince that February, and kept at it for almost 10 years. He was a beat unto himself. I wrote about him for Billboard, Melody Maker, Newsday, and continued writing about him occasionally after I left the Pioneer Press in 2003. I never lost track of him, or stopped listening to him. I always felt like I was writing a history book when I was covering Prince. This is it. Frankly, I scrambled to put this book together because his and other deaths of late make me believe that time is of the essence, and that these writings can help flesh out a little reported time in Prince's career. I also wanted to put it together because I miss the man and his music, and the written word has always helped me make sense of life and loss. When Prince was alive, there was a comforting feeling around these parts, knowing that that hot flame was out in his mad scientist laboratory in Chanhassen, burning bright. Now that it's been snuffed out, I want to preserve what I can while I can. Thanks to Eric Anderson and everybody at the University of Minnesota Press for making this book happen so well and so fast. Thanks to Amy Nelson at the Pioneer Press for giving us the green light, and to all my former Pi Press colleagues, especially fellow Prince reporters/fans Chris Hewitt, Bruce Orwell, and Amy Carlson Gustafson. and to my Pioneer Press editors in the 90s, Pat McMorrow, Jim Tarbox, Sue Campbell, Don Boxmeyer, Larry May, Bob Shaw, Ken Doctor, Walker Lundy, and especially Dana Davis, who wrote many of the headlines you're about to read. And thanks always to Prince for all the dead, not dead music and magic. Peace, and be wild. 1994. Prince's magic lures the stars. February 14th. Magic Johnson stood with his wife, Cookie, in the back of the soundstage room at Paisley Park Studios, rocking to the bass-heavy mix being pumped out by the house DJ. It was 2 a.m. Sunday, but Johnson's eyes were as big as any Prince fan's eyes can get. "I don't care how late it gets. I'm not leaving until he leaves the stage," the former NBA great said, over the deafening sound of the booming speakers. "He's the best, a genius. I love everything he does, but my wife and I especially like his ballads." Magic and Cookie should be in seventh heaven on this Valentine's Day, then, because one of Prince's finest ever pop ballads, "The Most Beautiful Girl in the World," hits stores today. Johnson was one of 600 or so guests at an early morning invite-only party Prince threw at Paisley Park Sunday to commemorate the release of Beautiful Girl, an exquisitely down-to-earth torch song that celebrates the power of womankind. At midnight, visitors began arriving at Paisley Park, which was decked out in a lavish Roman Empire meets cyberspace motif that went by the name of The Beautiful Experience. The guests included NBA players David Robinson, Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins, Alonzo Mourning, Danny Manning, Dikembe Mutombo, and James Jackson. Vikings wide receiver Chris Carter, television stars Will Smith, Downtown Julie Brown, Daisy Fuentes, and Bill Bellamy, hip-hop kids Chris Cross, soul-singing phenom Tevin Campbell, members of pop music groups Salt and Pepper, Soul Asylum, and the Gin Blossoms, and, get this, power of positive thinking dude Tony Robbins. They sauntered from room to room, taking in a jazz quintet led by saxophonist Eric Leeds, videos in a mini theater space, and a PG-rated peep show, where they could check out live, if lame, sex on stage. But beyond the surreal schmoozathon aspect, the all-night bash served as a coming-out party and promotional vehicle for Beautiful Girl. The video for the song makes its world premiere on MTV today, but partygoers were treated to a sneak preview of the clip, which depicts women of all shapes, sizes, and colors in various role/fantasies, from childbirth to beauty contests to a black woman as 43rd President of the United States. The night was filled with video images, pictures, and posters of Prince. Finally, at 3:15, the real thing, clad in black and sporting fishhook-shaped sideburns and an artful Dodger top hat, hit the stage with his new 5-piece band and dancer Mayte in tow. The scintillating 9-song performance consisted of all new material, much of which was hard blues-flecked rock and spare guitar-driven funk songs that follow the lead of Beautiful Girl by taking to task sexist rappers and attempting a redefinition of the beauty myth. Throughout the 70-minute set, which was videotaped for future release, Prince appeared to be loose and genuinely having fun. But there was a purpose to the material that has been missing in recent years. On the opening number, Days of Wild, he howled, "Call her bitch or hoe? I don't think so. A woman should be thanked every day." There was a sinewy blues ballad, "We Got to Break It Down," which appeared to speak to the hardships of keeping a long-term relationship afloat. And at one point, over a wicked guitar line, he proclaimed, "It's 1994. Don't worry about the name. There was Irresistible Bitch and Sexy MF. That was then. This is now." Clearly, Prince has matured when it comes to matters of the heart and matters of the female, though, make no mistake, all of it is filtered through his own inimitable brand of sexuality/mysticism. And if Sunday morning's performance is any indication, he's poised to record his most thoughtful and meaningful music since 1987's Sign of the Times album. He's not just another pretty symbol. February 18th. Around the time Purple Rain came out in 1984, there was a story going around the Twin Cities that Prince was showing up at the Southtown movie theater, sitting in the back row night after night taking in multiple viewings of Amadeus. Even if it's not true, it's a great story. I love the image of Prince alone in the back row of a dark movie house, his album and movie #1 in the country, gleaning solace and inspiration from another composer who turned the world on its ear 2 centuries prior. It's lonely at the top, Tom Hulse, as Mozart would say to the new Purple Boy genius. That's me, Prince would say back to the screen and himself, slinking out of the theater before the end credits and crowd started rolling. For some reason, the Amadeus story was the first thing I thought of when Prince changed his name to a symbol last summer. Maybe I should have listened to those wise and rocking anchor people and gossip columnists when their 13-second, "Isn't this guy a weirdo?" stories came out, thus saving me the embarrassment of this confession. But I didn't. Instead, I wondered. And now I wonder aloud. Just what if Prince adopted the symbol not as a publicity stunt, but as a way of reclaiming himself, as an attempt to elevate his gift, his genius beyond words, and a culture that makes mincemeat out of gifts and genius? Back then, I felt a little silly about my theory. But since the hits/the B-sides came out, I'm convinced that I, and he, was right all along. And after watching his performance last Sunday morning at Paisley Park, I'm more convinced than ever. One incident in particular made me think back to the Amadeus legend. To say the least, it was a surreal night. Dry ice and pseudo-bacchanalian theme rooms, and basketball players and rock stars and scantily clad, feather-draped women performing spontaneous dances. Like Never Never Land with little girls instead of little boys, observed Soul Asylum manager Bill Sullivan. But all that became so much perfunctory window dressing when Prince hit the stage at 3:15 a.m. After running through a batch of new material with his band, keyboardists Tommy Barbarella and Mr. Hayes, drummer Michael Bland, bassist Sonny T, a little-known guest guitarist took the stage. Prince was seated at a pristine white piano with the word "beautiful" inscribed on the side, and was riffing on the opening boogie-woogie run to Ray Charles's "What Did I Say?" The kid stood center stage, fumbling with his guitar and pedals, until he finally gave up and traipsed over to the piano bench. He bent down and talked for about 20 seconds into Prince's stony ear. But unbeknownst to the kid, he wasn't at Paisley Park anymore. In the blink of an eye, Prince had become Mozart, and the kid Salieri, the patron saint of mediocrity. And he was about to become an unwitting player in a postmodern restaging of the scene in Amadeus when Mozart plays a composition while hanging upside down, then humiliate Salieri with a lampooning of the other composer's own work. Grudgingly, Prince got up from the piano as the band chugged along behind him. He picked up the kid's guitar, briefly inspected it, then strapped it on. The kid stood behind Prince with his hands on his hips and nervously puffed at his bangs. With no effort at all, Prince placed his hands on the instrument and made it come to life. First with a slow, bending riff, then with a muscular, out-of-this-world lead. 60 seconds was all. He stopped, handed the guitar back to the kid, and said into the mic, "I just wanted to see if it worked." The crowd went berserk with laughter. He returned to the piano and, behind the kid's back, exaggeratedly rolled his eyes. More laughter. The band continued to crank, and the kid did his best to recover by pumping out some ordinary Chuck Berry riffs. But the damage had been done. Compared with Prince's fireworks, the guitar was returned to its original state as a hunk of metal, wood, and strings, not a magic wand. It was, in the words of another Minnesota Mozart, a guitar in the hands of a man who just can't play. When the song came to an end, Prince introduced Bud Light on guitar and graciously implored the crowd to give it up for the kid. Then under his breath, but clearly into the mic, he said, "Give it up," and he should. Give or take Isaiah Ryder's East Bay Funk, it was the best slam of the weekend. In that instant, Prince showed why he's head and shoulders above most any and all who call themselves musicians these days. Call it what you will, a competitive mean streak or an obsessive desire to be the best. But whatever makes a genius, Prince has got it in spades. But his diss of the kid wasn't even the high point of the morning. That came in waves as he unveiled his new original material, a stripped-down, Dirty Mind meets Sign of the Times stew that took to task his old sexist ways and made for an exhilarating fast-forward / post-feminist feel. But the evolution didn't hatch itself in a vacuum. During a break in the action Sunday morning, Prince's publicist, Karen Lee, took to the stage to explain the genesis of his latest single, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. In response to Paisley's personal ads from an eligible bachelor who was seeking the most beautiful girl in the world, Lee explained, Paisley had received more than 50,000 responses from women of all walks of life who define beauty in myriad ways. It may not have been exactly the reaction Prince was looking for, but in a weird way, it has obviously served as an outreach for an artist who has too often had his head in the sand / Batcave. The letter writers became, in a sense, collaborators. At various points in his career, Prince has appeared to be cooked or kooky, but take it from a newly won-over re-believer. Sunday morning's wee hour set proved that the guy is about to reinvent himself, again. And if you're skeptical of that report, I guess I don't blame you. But if you'd seen the unlikely trio of Dikembe Mutombo, Tony Robbins, and Danny Manning all up near the front of the stage swaying together at 4 a.m. last weekend, you'd believe that something special was going on too. Because then, you would have heard it. You would have heard it when Dikembe, Tony, and Danny led the crowd of basketball players, rock stars, and guests in a silent chant. Rock me, Amadeus. Prince treats lucky fans to after-hours rehearsal, May 26th. As part of Glam Slam's ongoing Erotic City after-hours party, Prince and his band showed up at 2 a.m. Wednesday to turn in a laid-back, 5-song, 40-minute jam in front of 150 fans. As far as polished performances go, the set was fairly unremarkable, save for a couple of spellbinding solos by electric violinist Dennis Boder of the Los Angeles band Floor 13, and some typically great guitar fireworks from Prince. But the show provided late-night club crawlers a sneak peek at a band rehearsal, complete with Prince counting off parts, making up arrangements on the spot, and running the soundboard. Kicking off the jam was a slow blues burn. Prince lay on his back for the first 2 songs and picked out feathery leads while band members took turns at solos. The highlight of the night was a version of Sly and the Family Stone's I Want to Take You Higher, featuring Prince on bass. After performing Get Wild, a new original penned by bassist Sonny Thompson, Prince ended the night by saying, Come back tomorrow, y'all, and we'll make a big noise. At press time Wednesday, the rumor was that Prince was organizing a scavenger hunt for all denizens of Thursday morning's edition of Erotic City, the prize for which was said to be tickets to a private concert at Paisley Park Studios, where the adrenalized one has reportedly been itching to break in a new stage dubbed the Endorphin Machine. Prince's big noise for fans at his house doesn't disappoint. May 27th. Come back tomorrow and we'll make a big noise, Prince told a crowd of 150 night crawlers at the end of an unannounced 40-minute jam at Glam Slam's after-hours Erotic City Club Tuesday night / Wednesday morning. Come back they did, and Prince kept his promise. After the clubs closed Wednesday, Some 350 arrivees to Glam Slam paid $10 to get into Erotic City, and were met by an exotic dancer/bingo caller who led them through the paces of a Prince-styled scavenger hunt. Participants were instructed to perform 3 tasks: write down the chorus of Prince's latest hit, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, write down the names of 2 of Prince's band members, and collect a guitar pick sticker from one of the several dancers who were roaming the Erotic City pedestals. The fans joined in on the freaky festivities, and after turning in their booty to the Erotic City staff, were issued a ticket to an after-hours bash at Paisley Park Studios in Chanhassen. Upon arrival, the crowd was escorted into the Paisley soundstage, where Prince's new stage, a gigantic, futurist contraption dubbed the Endorphin Machine, was bathed in fog and awash in multicolored backlights. At 3 a.m., the band, keyboardists Tommy Barbarella and Mr. Hayes, bassist Sonny T., drummer Michael Bland, and cameo violinist Dennis Boder, mounted the stage, and Prince asked the congregation, "You like my house?" The comment was met with a smattering of squeals, and as the band eased into a slow, sultry version of The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, a group of female fans called out, "We want a beautiful experience." At that, the singer, clad in crushed red velvet, slunk behind the curtains of the stage's main compartment, which looked to house a fully equipped bedroom. With a cordless microphone, he dared the women to come back so he could make good on their request. A few cautiously approached the compartment, but promptly jumped back when they drew back the curtain and came face to face with the little love god himself. The first hour of the set showcased Prince's customary ho-hum guitar wizardry. On the 3rd song of the night, he used the hard blues foundation of a new number, Race, to fire off a variety of muscular, expressive, jaw-dropping leads in which not a note was wasted. It was the most astonishing display of rock guitar virtuosity I have ever witnessed in concert. A performance that reinforces the idea that when it comes to greatness, there are only a couple of rock guitarists in Prince's league, and they're dead. Other standouts of the first set were Shh, a song written for Tevin Campbell that appeared on Campbell's last album, and Get Wild, a new party rave written by Sonny T. "We ain't got no curfew in my house," Prince told the crowd as the clock approached 4 a.m. Then, over the campily cliched sound of a DJ scratching vinyl, he asked, "You all want it live?" The band lurched into Days of Wild, an exhilarating funk rocker that lyrically and musically pits the transient nature of hip-hop with the musical chops of an old-school genius. When he intoned, "I can tear shit up, that's my style," the message was clear. Hip-hop may be the most commercially successful and influential music of the moment, but most of those sucker MCs couldn't run with Prince on a real musical instrument if their entire collection of James Brown vinyl depended on it. Prince played the song with such fury, such purposefulness, such playfulness, that he broke a string on his bass. Still, he continued playing for a good 10 minutes, pounding out defiant slaps and leads, refusing to let go of the groove that had possessed his bad self. After a 15-minute break, it was almost as if a different band had entered the Endorphin Machine. If the first set highlighted Prince's newfound love affair with the guitar, the second emphasized his ongoing love affair with R&B. The set opened with the soul workout Acknowledge Me, which he performed on Soul Train last week. After a couple more hard R&B tunes, the night ended with the lights all the way down for Dark, a dense, synthesized, horn-punctuated ballad that Prince introduced as a song about loneliness and sang like the kid cousin of Al Green. At one point, Prince said, "Ain't no party like a new power party," in reference to his loyal fan club, the New Power Generation, many members of which were in attendance. As the moon hung in the sky over Chanhassen at 4:45 Thursday morning, the sun was just starting to come up. Inside, Prince grinned graciously at the crowd of weary but delirious scavenger hunters.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?